Velrix had lived for 3,000 years. In that time, the crystalline being had watched empires rise from dust and crumble back into nothing. Velrix had seen species discover fire and species forget how to dream. The Galactic Concord trusted Velrix with their most important task, watching new species and deciding if they were dangerous. Most species were not dangerous. Most species were predictable. They wanted food, safety, and territory. They fought when the numbers made sense and surrendered when the numbers did not. This was the way of intelligent life across the galaxy. Logic ruled everything. Then the Concord found humanity. They were a young species from a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. Their bodies were soft and broke easily. They had no claws, no armor, no poison. They could not see in the dark or breathe underwater. By every measure the Concord used, humans should have been classified as harmless. But something about them made the elder species nervous. The reports were strange. Humans had fought each other for thousands of years over ideas. Not territory, not resources, ideas. They had walked into certain death for things they called honor and freedom and love. They kept pets that could kill them. They climbed mountains for no reason. They explored the deepest parts of their ocean, even though they could not survive there. The Concord did not understand this. So they sent Velrix. The assignment was simple. The Veth Dominion had declared war on humanity's outer colonies. The Veth were perfect predators. They had conquered 43 worlds and had never lost a war. Their bodies were designed for killing. Their minds felt no mercy. They would crush humanity in weeks, and Velrix would watch and document how humans died. Velrix arrived on the human colony ship called Horizon's Edge as a diplomatic observer. The humans welcomed the crystalline being with curious eyes and warm smiles. This confused Velrix. The humans were about to fight a war they could not win. Why were they smiling? The first human Velrix met was Captain Park Do-hwan. He was 42 years old with tired eyes and gray hair at his temples. He moved slowly and spoke quietly. There was nothing special about him. He looked like a man who had seen too much and slept too little. "Welcome aboard," Park Do-hwan said. "I hope you find what you're looking for." Velrix did not know what to say. The Concord had sent the observer to watch humans lose. This did not seem like a kind thing to tell the captain. The second human was Lieutenant Kim Yuna. She was the tactical officer, responsible for planning how the ship would fight. She was 31 years old and had a strange habit of smiling at everything. She smiled when she read battle reports. She smiled when she calculated the enemy's strength. She smiled when she told Velrix that the Veth outnumbered them 3-1. "Does the situation not worry you?" Velrix asked. Kim Yuna shrugged. "Worry doesn't change the math. We'll fight with what we have, but you cannot win." "Probably not," she agreed, still smiling. "But we'll make them remember us." The third human was Sergeant Lee Taiho. He commanded the ground soldiers who would fight if the enemy landed on a planet's surface. He was a large man with rough hands and a deep voice. He carried a worn photograph in his chest pocket. When Velrix asked about it, he pulled it out carefully. The photograph showed a small girl with pigtails holding a stuffed rabbit. "My daughter," Lee Taiho said. "She's 7. She lives on the colony we're going to protect." Velrix felt something strange. A sensation the crystalline being had not experienced in many centuries. Later, Velrix would learn that humans called this feeling concern. "You are fighting to protect your offspring," Velrix observed. "This is logical." Lee Taiho laughed softly. "I'm fighting to protect everyone's offspring. Every child on that colony. Every mother and father. Every grandparent. They're all someone's family. But many of them are strangers to you. Yes. Then why risk your life for them? The sergeant looked at Velrix for a long moment. His eyes were sad but not afraid. Because if I don't, who will? Velrix did not have an answer. Over the next 3 days, the observer walked through the ship and watched the humans prepare for war. They checked their weapons. They ran simulations. They wrote letters to people they loved. Some of them prayed to gods that Velrix did not understand. Some of them laughed and told jokes that were not funny. Some of them cried in private when they thought no one was watching. They all knew they were probably going to die, and none of them tried to run. Velrix had watched species face extinction before. Usually, there was panic, screaming, desperation. The strong would abandon the weak. Leaders would flee first. It was simple survival instinct. It was logical. The humans did the opposite. The strongest among them volunteered for the most dangerous positions. Officers gave their rations to enlisted soldiers. Parents recorded messages for their children, telling them to be brave and kind and to never give up. On the night before the battle, Velrix found Captain Park Do-hwan standing alone on the observation deck. He was staring out at the stars. "May I ask you something?" Velrix said. "Of course. Why do your people not surrender? The Veth would spare some of you. You could negotiate. You could survive." Park Do-hwan was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "There are 60,000 people on that colony. 12,000 of them are children. If we surrender, the Veth will take them as slaves. They will never see their parents again. They will never laugh or play or dream their own dreams." He turned to look at Velrix. "What kind of people would we be if we let that happen to save ourselves?" Velrix had no answer. The next morning, the Veth fleet arrived. The Veth fleet came out of hyperspace like a swarm of black insects. Velrix counted them as they appeared on the sensors. 43 warships. Each one was built for one purpose: killing. Their hulls were covered in sharp angles and weapon ports. They moved through space with the cold confidence of predators who had never known defeat. The human fleet had 17 ships. On the bridge of the horizon's edge, Captain Park Do-hwan stood perfectly still. His officers worked around him, calling out numbers and positions. Their voices were calm. Too calm. Velrix had seen this behavior before in other species. It was called shock. The brain refused to accept what the eyes were seeing. But when Velrix looked closer at the humans, the observer realized something different. They were not in shock. They were focused. Every movement had purpose. Every word had meaning. They were not pretending the danger did not exist. They were simply choosing not to let fear control them. The Veth commander's face appeared on the main screen. The creature was terrifying. Its skin was dark gray and covered in scales. Its eyes were yellow with vertical slits. When it opened its mouth, Velrix saw 3 rows of teeth designed for tearing flesh. "Human vessels," the Veth commander said. Its voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "I am War Chief Kethril. Your colony belongs to the Dominion now. Surrender your ships, and we will be merciful. Some of you will be allowed to live as servants. This is our only offer." The bridge was silent. Every human turned to look at Captain Park Do-hwan. The captain's face showed no fear. He pressed a button on his chair and spoke to the Veth commander directly. "War Chief Kethril, my name is Park Do-hwan. I have a question for you." The Veth commander looked amused. "Ask your question, little human. Have you ever lost a war?" Kethril laughed. The sound was horrible. "Never. We have conquered 43 worlds. We have crushed every species that dared to resist us. Your question is pointless." Park Do-hwan nodded slowly. I thought so. That explains why you don't understand us. Understand what? We're not going to surrender. The Veth commander's smile faded. Then you will die. Probably, Park Do-won agreed. But not today. And not without cost. He ended the transmission. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Lieutenant Kim Yuna turned from her tactical station. She was still smiling, but now there was something sharp in her eyes. Something dangerous. Sir, the enemy is moving into attack formation. Good, Park Do-won said. He pressed another button on his chair. This one connected him to every ship in the human fleet. His voice would reach every soldier, every pilot, every engineer, every person who had chosen to stay and fight. This is Captain Park Do-won of the Horizon's Edge. In a few minutes, we will engage the enemy. I will not lie to you. The odds are not in our favor. Many of us will not survive this day. Velrix watched the faces of the humans on the bridge. They did not look away. They did not cry. They listened. Below us is Kepler 442b, 60,000 of our people live there. Farmers, teachers, doctors, artists, children who have never seen Earth. Children who draw pictures of stars they've never visited and dream of. Futures they haven't lived yet. Park Do-won's voice grew stronger. The Veth believe we will calculate our chances and retreat. They believe we will sacrifice our people to save ourselves. They believe we are like every other species they have conquered. They are wrong. He paused. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet but fierce. We are human. We do not abandon our own. We do not trade children for safety. We do not bow to monsters. Velrix felt something strange happening in the room. The air itself seemed to change. The humans stood straighter. Their eyes burned brighter. It was as if the captain's words had ignited something inside them. Something that had been sleeping. Today we fight. Not because we can win, but because some things are worth fighting for even when you can't win. Today we show the galaxy what humanity means. Today we make them remember us. He looked around the bridge at his crew, at Kim Yuna, who was still smiling, at the young officers who gripped their stations with white knuckles, at Velrix, the alien observer who had come to watch them die. All ships, charge. The human fleet moved forward. Velrix had watched many battles. The crystalline being had seen elegant combat and brutal slaughter. But the observer had never seen anything like this. The humans did not form defensive lines. They did not wait for the enemy to come to them. They attacked. 17 ships against 43, and they attacked. The first volley of Veth War through space. 2 human ships exploded instantly. Their debris scattered like broken glass. But the rest kept coming. They did not slow down. They did not retreat. They flew straight into the storm of death. On the bridge, Lieutenant Kim Yuna called out targets. Her voice never wavered. Enemy carrier at bearing 275. Destroyer formation at 310. Recommend we target the carrier's engines. Agreed, Park Do-won said. All 4 batteries fire. The Horizon's Edge shook as its weapons released. Velrix watched the human missiles streak toward the enemy. Some of them were shot down, but others hit their target. The Veth carrier's engines exploded in a ball of fire. The Veth commander's voice came over the radio, filled with surprise and anger. They damaged the inevitable. How did they damage the inevitable? Velrix understood the confusion. By every logical calculation, the humans should have been trying to escape. They should have been protecting themselves. Instead, they were attacking with everything they had. More human ships died, but so did Veth ships. The battle had just begun, and already the Veth were learning something their 43 conquered worlds had never taught them. Humans did not fight to survive. They fought to win. And if they could not win, they fought to make the enemy bleed. The battle lasted for 3 days. Velrix did not sleep. Crystalline beings did not need sleep, but even if they did, the observer could not have closed their eyes. What was happening was too important, too strange, too terrifying. On the first day, the humans lost 5 ships. The Veth lost only 3. By every calculation, this meant the humans were losing. But Velrix noticed something odd. The Veth commanders were not celebrating. They were confused. Why don't they run? Velrix heard one Veth officer say over the intercepted communications. Their fleet is dying. Why don't they run? The humans did not run because running was not an option. Below them, 60,000 people waited. 12,000 children looked up at the sky and trusted that someone would save them. The human fleet would not abandon that trust. On the second day, Velrix watched something that would haunt the observer forever. The destroyer Inchen had lost its main weapons. A Veth attack had torn through its hull and killed half the crew. The ship was crippled. It could barely move. By every logical measure, the captain should have surrendered or retreated. Captain Choi Mai-Rei did neither. She was a woman of 50 years with iron gray hair and a voice that could cut steel. When her weapons failed, she called her remaining crew to the bridge. "We have 2 choices," she said. "We can drift here and die slowly, or we can make our deaths mean something." Nobody asked what she meant. They already knew. The Inchen turned toward the largest Veth carrier in the enemy fleet. Its engines, damaged but still working, pushed the ship forward. Faster and faster. The Veth saw what was happening and tried to shoot the destroyer down. But the Inchen kept coming. Velrix listened to the final transmission. "This is Captain Choi Mai-Rei of the UEC Inchen. Tell my daughter I love her. Tell her I died standing up." Then she laughed. Not a cry of despair. Not a scream of fear. A laugh. As if the whole thing was the funniest joke in the universe. The Inchen hit the Veth carrier at full speed. The explosion was so bright that Velrix had to look away. When the light faded, both ships were gone. 1,000 Veth soldiers died in that moment. Choi Mai-Rei and her crew had traded their lives for an enemy ship 3 times their size. The Veth commander's voice came over the radio. For the first time, Velrix heard fear in it. What is wrong with these creatures? On the ground, things were even stranger. The Veth had landed soldiers on Kepler 442b. They expected easy prey. The colony had only a small defense force. The civilians were farmers and miners and teachers. The Veth were born killers with scales like armor and claws like knives. But the humans would not surrender. Sergeant Lee Tai-ho led his soldiers through the burning streets of the colony's main city. Velrix watched through combat drones, recording everything. The humans were outmatched in every way. The Veth were faster, stronger, better armed. And still the humans fought. Velrix watched a medic named Song Hana drag a wounded soldier through a street filled with enemy fire. Plasma bolts burned the air around her. One hit her arm and she screamed. But she did not stop. She pulled the soldier into cover, bandaged his wounds, then picked up his rifle and started shooting. "Why did you save him?" Velrix asked her later. "You could have died." Song Hana looked at the observer with tired, bloodshot eyes. "He's my friend. He has a wife and 2 kids. I couldn't let him die alone in the street. But you were wounded." She shrugged. "Pain goes away. Regret doesn't." Velrix watched a young private named Baek Ji-won hold a defensive position for 11 hours. She was barely 20 years old. A Veth grenade had shattered her leg. She could not walk. She could barely sit up. But she refused to leave. Behind her, a group of civilians was escaping through underground tunnels. Children, elderly, wounded. They needed time. Beak Jiwan gave them time. When Velrix found her, she was sitting against a broken wall, her rifle in her hands, her face pale from blood loss. Around her were the bodies of 7 Veth soldiers she had killed. "You should have retreated," Velrix said. "You cannot survive." Beak Jiwan smiled weakly. "Someone has to stay. Someone has to hold the line. Why you?" "Because I was here. Because I could." She coughed. Blood stained her lips. "Because those kids, they deserve a chance. Even if I don't get one." Velrix did not understand. The crystalline being had watched 17 civilizations and countless wars. In every case, the wounded retreated. The dying gave up. Self-preservation was the most basic instinct in the universe. But humans did not follow that rule. They threw themselves onto grenades to save their friends. They crashed their ships into enemies. They held positions until they bled out. They refused to stop. On the 3rd day, the Veth commander broadcast a message of frustration and rage. "What are you? You cannot win. Your ships are burning. Your soldiers are dying. Every calculation says you should surrender. Why do you keep fighting?" Captain Park Do-hwan answered. His voice was tired but steady. "Because surrender was never an option. Because our people are worth more than our lives. Because as long as one of us is breathing, hope is not dead." There was silence from the Veth fleet. Then the attack continued. But something had changed. The Veth were not fighting with confidence anymore. They were fighting with desperation. Because for the first time in their history, they had met an enemy who simply refused to break. By the end of the 3rd day, the human fleet had only 8 ships left. 9 had been destroyed. Thousands of soldiers were dead. The colony's shield generators were failing. In a few hours, the Veth would break through and take the planet. Velrix found Captain Park Do-hwan on the observation deck. He was alone, staring out at the stars. His uniform was stained with smoke and sweat. His hands trembled slightly. He looked like a man who had not slept in years. "You were going to lose," Velrix said. There was no point in being gentle. The truth was obvious. Park Do-hwan did not turn around. "I know. Then why continue? Your distress signal reached other human systems. Reinforcements are coming, but they will not arrive in time. If you retreat now, you can save your remaining ships. You can save your crew and leave 60,000 people to the Veth. It is the logical choice. You cannot save them all, but you can save some. The mathematics are clear." Park Do-hwan finally turned to face the crystalline observer. His eyes were red from exhaustion, but there was still fire in them. A stubborn burning flame that refused to die. "Velrix, let me tell you something about humans. We are not good at mathematics." The observer tilted their crystalline head. "I do not understand. I mean that we don't make decisions based on numbers alone. We make them based on something else. Something harder to measure." He walked closer to the window and pointed at the planet below. "Down there right now, there is a little girl named Lee Somi. She is 7 years old. She likes to draw pictures of spaceships. She wants to be a pilot when she grows up." Velrix remembered. Sergeant Lee Taiho's daughter. Yes, and there are 12,000 other children just like her. Children who have done nothing wrong. Children who just want to live and grow and dream. Park Do-hwan's voice grew harder. The Veth want to take them, to use them, to break them. And you want me to calculate the mathematics of letting that happen? I am simply stating the logical conclusion. Logic. Park Do-hwan almost spat the word. My grandmother was in a war once. A long time ago, on Earth. Her village was attacked by soldiers who burned everything. Everyone told her to run. Everyone told her to hide. Instead, she stayed and helped the wounded. She saved 11 people that day. When I asked her why she risked her life, she said something I never forgot. He looked directly at Velrix. She said, "We don't fight because we can win. We fight because some things are worth losing for." Velrix was silent. The crystalline being had no response. "I'm going to order my ships into a formation called the ThemHFY Maneuver," Park Do-hwan continued. "It's named after a battle on Earth thousands of years ago. 300 warriors held a narrow pass against an army of hundreds of thousands. They all died. Every single one. But they held the line long enough for their people to escape and fight another day. You will die. Probably. But the Veth will have to go through us to reach that colony. And for every hour we hold them, more civilians escape. More children survive. More hope lives." Lieutenant Kim Yuna's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, enemy fleet is advancing. Estimated contact in 20 minutes. Park Do-hwan pressed the response button. "Understood. Order all ships into ThemHFY formation." "Yes, sir." There was a pause. "Sir, it's been an honor." "The honor is mine, Lieutenant." "The honor is all mine." The channel closed. Park Do-hwan looked at Velrix one more time. "You came here to watch us die. To document how another species fell to the Veth. I want you to remember something instead." "What?" "We knew we couldn't win. From the very beginning, we knew. But we stayed anyway. Because there are things more important than survival. Because some battles are worth fighting even when you can't win. Because at the end of everything, the only thing that really matters is what you were willing to stand for." He walked toward the door. "If you survive this, tell the galaxy what you saw. Tell them that humans don't break. Tell them that we fight for each other. Tell them that when the darkness comes, we light ourselves on fire to push it back." He paused at the door. "Tell them to never threaten our children." Then he was gone. Velrix stood alone on the observation deck. Through the window, the observer watched the 8 remaining human ships move into formation. They formed a wall between the Veth fleet and the planet. A wall made of metal and fire and stubborn, impossible courage. The Veth commander broadcast one final ultimatum. "Humans, this is your last chance. Surrender now, and some of you will live." Captain Park Do-hwan's response was broadcast on all frequencies. His voice was calm, steady, final. "Come and take them." The Veth fleet opened fire. And the humans held the line. The human formation held for 7 hours. 7 hours of fire and death. 7 hours of impossible courage. The Veth threw everything they had at the 8 human ships. Missiles, energy weapons, attack fighters. The humans lost 2 more ships in the first hour, then 1 more in the third. By the 6th hour, only 5 ships remained. They were burning. They were broken. But they would not move. Velrix watched from the bridge of the horizon's edge. The ship shook constantly from enemy fire. Smoke filled the air. Crew members ran through the corridors, putting out fires and treating wounds. Captain Park Do-hwan stood at his command station, his face covered in ash and blood, giving orders in a voice that never wavered. "Redirect power from life support to forward shields. We can breathe thin air for a few more hours." "Aye, sir." "Target that destroyer coming up on our left. If it gets past us, it reaches the colony. Firing now, sir." Lieutenant Kim Yuna had stopped smiling. Not because she was afraid, but because she had no time. Her hands flew across her console, tracking enemy movements, calculating firing solutions, finding any weakness she could exploit. She had been awake for 3 days. Her eyes were red and swollen, but she kept working. "Captain," she said suddenly, "I'm detecting new hyperspace signatures." Park Do-won's jaw tightened. More Veth? Negative, sir. The signature is human. Velrix felt the air change. Every person on the bridge stopped what they were doing and looked at the main screen. 37 ships emerged from hyperspace. They were human vessels. Warships from the United Earth Coalition. The relief fleet had arrived. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then someone cheered. Then everyone was cheering, hugging each other, crying, laughing. The impossible had happened. Help had come. But the battle was not over yet. The Veth commander saw the new fleet and calculated the numbers. Even with the reinforcements, the Veth still had more ships. They could still win. It would cost them heavily, but victory was possible. For 10 long minutes, both fleets faced each other across the void. Nobody fired. Nobody moved. The Veth commander was making a decision. Velrix understood what was happening. The Veth were predators. They conquered the weak and avoided the strong. Every war they had fought was based on a simple calculation. Is victory worth the cost? For the first time, the answer was not clear. The Veth had come expecting easy prey. They had found something else. They had found a species that would not break. A species that crashed their ships into enemies rather than surrender. A species that held defensive positions with shattered bones. A species that smiled while dying. The Veth could win this battle, but how many would they lose? And if this was how humans fought for a colony of 60,000, how would they fight for Earth? For their homeworld? For their children? The cost of victory was too high. The Veth fleet turned and jumped into hyperspace. They ran. The bridge of the horizon's edge erupted in celebration. Soldiers embraced. Officers wept openly. Park Do-won leaned against his command chair and closed his eyes. He looked like a man who had been carrying a mountain and had finally been allowed to put it down. On the planet below, people emerged from shelters and bunkers. They looked up at the sky and saw their protectors. They cheered and cried and held each other. Children who had spent 3 days hiding in darkness came out into the sunlight. Among them was a little girl with pigtails. She ran through the streets, calling one word over and over. Daddy, Daddy. Sergeant Lee Tae-ho met her in the main square. He was wounded. His arm was in a sling and his face was covered in bandages. But he was alive. He dropped to his knees and caught his daughter as she jumped into his arms. I knew you would come, Lee So-mi whispered. I knew you would save us. Lee Tae-ho held her tight and cried. Always, baby, always. Velrix watched the reunions for many hours. Fathers finding sons. Mothers holding daughters. Friends embracing after believing each other dead. The observer recorded everything, but the recordings could not capture what Velrix truly saw. Love, sacrifice, hope. The things that humans fought for. The things they died for. The things that no calculation could measure. 1 week later, Velrix submitted a revised report to the Galactic Concord. It was the most important document the Observer had ever written. My previous assessment classified humanity as a minimal threat. This assessment was wrong. I am revising their threat level to existential. Humanity does not fight like other species. They do not calculate acceptable losses. They do not retreat when the numbers turn against them. They possess a quality that I can only translate as spite, the willingness to sacrifice everything for principle. The Veth destroyed 11 human ships. They killed 8,000 soldiers. And in exchange, they learned that humanity will burn alongside you rather than surrender. Other species fear death. Humanity fears only failing the people they love. Recommendation: do not engage humanity in warfare. Do not threaten their children. Do not underestimate their capacity for irrational, beautiful, terrifying sacrifice. The stars should fear them not because they are strong, but because they do not know how to stop. Velrix remained among the humans for another year. The observer attended Lee Taiho's daughter's 8th birthday party, watched Lieutenant Kim Yuna receive a Medal of Honor, stood beside Captain Park Do-won at a memorial service for the fallen, listening to him speak the names of every person who had died. On the last day, Velrix asked Park Do-won one final question. "You are not the strongest species, not the fastest, not the most advanced. Why do you win?" Park Do-won looked up at the stars, the same stars that now whispered humanity's name in fear. He smiled. "Because we're too stubborn to read the room." Velrix left humanity's space that day, but the observer never forgot what had been witnessed above. Kepler 442b. The galaxy had hundreds of powerful species, thousands of ancient civilizations, millions of years of history, but only one species scared them. Only one species fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to protect. Only one species made the stars themselves afraid: humanity.